to the degree that you want something is the degree you're afraid of not having.
Yeah. God, I wish I started when I was younger. I go, well, yeah, but you didn't. So shut the fuck up and let's keep going.
Right.
Like, you can't.
Nobody changes until they change their energy. And when you change your energy, you change your life. Because it's not till then that it's really real.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is way worse than I thought. It's like, oh yeah, it's way, way worse than you thought.
Yeah.
But luckily, there's more to you than you think.
May this message reach the hearts of as many possible in service of love. Say para el bien de todos.
Vylana Marcus.
It's me.
Wife.
Husband.
Yes, indeed.
I'm
Yes,
your
indeed.
wife.
Wow, what a journey for us to arrive here in this spot right now, huh?
Yeah. A lifetime.
Yeah.
A lifetime of a lot of years that felt like way too long.
Right. Like if we only knew that we were going to arrive here
For sure.
in this moment, we could have saved ourselves so much stress.
Yeah.
Like if we just knew there was a happy ending to the story, you know, at that point, it would have been like, oh, good. I'm learning lessons. I'm having fun. It's fine.
Yeah. All this is constructive and necessary, and it's guiding me to love, and it's okay because I know where I'm going. But there definitely wasn't that. There was no sense of having any idea where life was going in relation to love and relationship.
Yeah. And that's the nature of things, right? And that's actually it's the reason for faith. The reason for faith is to believe that this is coming. So it alleviates all of the stress and all of the experiences you have. But it's hard to have faith when you've never experienced it before, which is the reason it's faith. If you actually knew that it was coming, it wouldn't be faith, it'd be knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? So that doesn't really work. But faith itself is so powerful because if you have it, it would be like having this known reality if you had really strong faith. And then thinking back to life would have been like, oh, wow, I can really enjoy all of this stuff because you know what? I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to serve my message to the world. I'm going to be able to find this undying, unconditional love. I'm going to be able to get to all of these things. I'm just meandering now.
Yeah.
And that's where all of us are. We're just meandering and perhaps we've found certain things. And that's like the gift of actually arriving to this threshold and crossing it is just the understanding that even in this category, which I'd completely lost faith in, like we made it.
Yeah.
We made it.
Fairy tales are real.
They're real. I was like the number one shit talker about fairy tales, putting out a message that was impossible to live up to. And what is this nonsense?
Oh, yeah.
It's all bullshit. And in some ways, that's correct because the fairy tales are leaving out a lot of the shadow, a lot of the darkness, a lot of the experiences that we have with everybody else that's going to shape us into the person that we are right now.
For sure. And all of those experiences in the darkness and challenge is what creates the healer within us. It's the part of us that gets to drive into being something different. But when you're in in the mud, in the muck, in the suffering, it's so easy to just get stuck in this really difficult way of being. but to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, to just have enough faith to access, even if the light is small, the way that it can carry you so differently. I wish myself now could have told myself back then I was going to get through it all. I was going to survive, not only survive, but thrive.
What do you think yourself of then would say to this yourself of now if you're like, listen, baby girl, it's all going to be all right? Like, would you have been like, fuck you?
Probably in some way. I think I've always had a more positive perspective. Like, I always try to see the silver lining.
So you'd have been like, I knew it. I knew it.
Possibly. But also, it could just feel like something being spoken to try to nurture, the discomfort that I was in. So I think a part of me could believe, and then the other part would say, fuck you.
Yeah.
You be here. You be in this experience because it sucks and it hurts so bad.
And you're like, I know, I'm you. I was there. I remember.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a gift that we can give people listening now, is just an understanding by going through our own stories to understand. And I'm sure people will identify with parts of our stories that have been parts of their stories, because we are all sharing this experience in more ways than we ever give credit. We always look at the differences, but there are far more similarities
so many
than there are differences. So where did your journey to understanding love begin? Because it begins for all of us as a little baby, immersed in this universal love. Well, maybe starts actually in the womb, where there's nothing but love and you're swimming around in this seemingly infinite universe, even though it's contained by the walls of the skin of your mother's belly. But nonetheless, it seems like this, all your needs are taken care of. You're floating around, whatever. Water breaks. Oh my God, what's happening? Got to fight through this little canal. Ah, air, I'm breathing. What the hell? There's so many lights. They're injecting me with vaccines. What the fuck is happening? And then but eventually you settle back in and you're getting nursed at the teat, and it's all love. It's all love.
You feel the love from your mother. You feel her
Right.
her heartbeat on the outside. You feel, that presence of divine love, even in those first moments. But I mean, the way that love constructed for me, and I've done a lot of work around this in plant medicine and meditation, and all of my deep soul work and journeying was around me as a 2.5-year-old when my little sister came into the world. I went from this like vibrant, eccentric, wild being and feeling like I had all 100% of the love, which I absolutely thought was limited, I'm sure, at that stage of life. 100% of the love.
I get the full love pie.
All of it was
and
for
I get
me.
to eat it all the time.
All the time. And then this little thing comes in that cries, and, all the attention and that love and nurture that I was looking for is placed, on my sister. And
That
as
nugget is eating my pie.
Yeah. So she became the object of my not understanding why it felt like love in some sense was being withdrawn from me.
So you projected it as her fault.
Yeah. I externalized, because they had no ability to even understand,
Of course not. You're a little being.
I'm a little being. And so that developed into having this story that I needed to compete to get the love.
And you started early.
I did. I did. I was 4 years old, and my mom was a Polynesian dancer. She was the most graceful, beautiful. She was my goddess, hula dancing, Tahitian dancing, and she was the best. I'm like, I for sure have to be the best. I want the most love from her, so I got to be like my mom. And I started competing when I was 4. I threw a tantrum to compete. They didn't even have an age category for 4-year-olds. Obviously, like, who's Tahitian dancing at 4? They had a category of 7 to 8-year-olds, and I somehow cried and fought my way to be able to compete, because I wanted the love, and I won. Yeah. So that's
Ryan, can we clip in, for people watching YouTube, can we put in a clip of her as a little 4-year-old little nugget out there shaking it all around the stage, being a ham?
And it's so funny too, because I was like terrified. You can see in my face, like, I'm doing it for love, but it's so uncomfortable. I'm like always looking at the floor. I'm going crazy. My hips are like going insane, but I was scared. But it was, that drive in me to be loved the most was so strong even then. And it led to insane competition strategies for everything that I did.
Right.
In school, in anything that I put my mind to, like even in school, which I did really well at because that was also a way of getting love.
Love from your teacher, love from anybody.
My good grades
attention equals that surrogate for love, right? Like, if we're getting attention, that means love.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to get as much attention as possible. Well, if I know the answers, I'll get called on. I get to raise my hand. I get that attention. If I get good grades, and the teacher will appreciate that and say a nice comment. And then I go home and I show my report card and I get love for that.
Yeah. And I can always be right.
Ooh.
I can always be right. I don't ever have to like dance in failure or shame or judgment. It was a safety mechanism.
That's why you like math.
I love math.
Because there's a right answer and it's right and it's 100% right.
Exactly.
Which is why I fucking hated it.
I loved it so much. There's always a right answer and I could figure it out. That's the way that my mind worked. But when it came to expanding outside of that, and that way of thinking that's like you, very philosophical and wondering about things, that was not part of my being. I just wanted to know the answer so that I could excel. I didn't want to expand I didn't even know how to expand into anything more than that.
It's interesting because I'm thinking back and I despise math, and I despise math because a lot of people could get the right answer. So actually I might have even been deeper in the pathology than you, in that I wanted to be so special that I was producing something that nobody else could do and was clearly better than everybody else. So the only way to do that was in the written word, in English and philosophy and these different ideas. So math was like, half the class got that answer. Like, how am I special? Like that doesn't make any sense. I need to write a poem. And I remember I wrote a poem when I was in 6th grade. And the teacher called the principal and they had a meeting for me with my parents. And we didn't know what it was about. And they showed the poem and they're like, to my parents, like, we know that you wrote this and this is cheating and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we didn't fucking write this. And I was like, how dare you? How dare you?
How dare you shit on my specialness?
Yeah, exactly. But actually it made me feel more special because they're like, you think my parents wrote this. But it was a weird poem for like a 6th grader to write, because even though that's kind of getting older, but it was about this man who took a sled out into the snow to die. He knew that he was going to die, and he's taking the sled with his dogs, and he's going out deeper and deeper into the deep snow, and then unhitches the sled, kisses his dogs, hugs his dogs goodbye, lets them loose, and lays back in the snow and allows the cold to seep into his bones until the blackness comes and he dies.
Oh my God.
It was dark.
Of course you wrote that. You're so dramatic and wonderful.
Yeah, my parents actually had that framed for a while, and it's interesting that I was like exploring that kind of concept at that age. But I know that, for me, the first realization of death had a big impact on me. So I think it was me in an early stage trying to grapple with my understanding of death.
You are so far beyond me. That didn't come till like 29, maybe. 6th grade-year-old Aubrey just crushing it at life already. All right.
Well, we both had a lot of similarities, though, in our desire to compete, because for me, it was always sports and it was all of the other things. And that's the way I learned, like if I played well in a game, everybody gave me love and credit in the school, and I got trophies. And, after a good game, the car ride home with my dad, he was excited and he was talking to things. If I played a shitty game, he was just kind of quiet. He wasn't mean, but he was just quiet. And it was that removal of attention, that absence of attention, the apathy almost, the withdrawal. It was like, oh my God,
yeah.
I'll never play a bad game again, which then makes me play worse games because I'm so worried about it. I'm not in the flow.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that idea of this conditional love paradigm is where we all come from. And we do it to ourselves, because once we learn that from the world, we apply it to ourselves. So actually nobody else needs to do that to us, because we do it to ourselves.
The best, the absolute best. And if I am not being the best, if I am not succeeding, then there is this incredibly harsh, unforgiving judge always. So it's like, it kind of actually turns into almost like a self-hatred thing.
Yeah.
That you're just constantly, placing this negative energy on yourself. Like, how can you really thrive in the things that you love in that kind of, with those kind of constructs.
It takes the love of the thing and it actually deteriorates it.
Yeah.
You know, you start doing a thing because you love it, but then eventually when you're doing it as a means to an end, the end being receiving of love, it's just a means and you don't enjoy the means because all you're focused on is the end.
Yeah.
And so you lose the spirit of the thing.
It's interesting to even think about Tahitian dancing because there was so much of it that I did love. I loved the sense of community. You know, Polynesian people are so about ohana and tribe, and you know, so there was that beautiful element, but I probably in many ways missed it because I was so obsessed with being the best that's what I was there for. I wasn't taking in how special it was to have these potlucks and aunties who had all this, you know, beautiful wisdom and love to share with me. It was like I was there to win.
Yeah. Just a Tahitian dancing killer. Just the assassin going in to take your trophy and move along.
Yeah. And then when I stopped, you know, my parents divorced when I was 12, which, you know, was the most incredible disruptor of life, you know, not placing any kind of blame on them. You know, they always did their best and they were so loving of my sister and I, but it just wrecked me inside because this bubble of love that I knew as everything, you know, it didn't blow up in a crazy way, but it wasn't that anymore. It was like life was paradise and then it just wasn't. And when I left California and moved with my mother and my stepfather, I stopped dancing. So I didn't have that thing anymore to fight for. So, I mean, I applied it to school, but like none of it made me feel alive or passionate or, you know, the only thing that I really had that I was passionate about was singing. But that was also this society conditioned construct of what that was supposed to be, you know? Not just singing because I love to sing. I had to sing like Christina Aguilera. I had to sing like Mariah Carey and annoy the hell out of my poor little sister my whole life, belting in the car. My mom and I used to drive her crazy. But it also wasn't, it was void of the soul.
Right. Yeah, because you were focused on the expression of it and not the intention of it or the kind of what you were really trying to convey. It was like, again, a means to an end. The end was the fame, the recognition, the adulation, everything else that you were really going for. But singing was just a vehicle to get you there.
For sure. And
there's just no way to sing.
And I just tried to sing well. I wasn't singing from my heart things that I meant and that I could feel, and that, you know, it was, how can I hit every single note that I'm supposed to hit because I could, but it was so void of the heart in it.
Right. You went through a pretty dark period around 14. What do you think precipitated that, and like bring us into that, into that space that you were in?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to start by just saying we have the choice to look at anything from our past as purely trauma, or we can look at it as a gift that teaches us the lessons that are necessary for us to learn, kind of as our human evolves and as our soul evolves. So I look back on all of these experiences with immense gratitude. But yeah, when my parents divorced, not only, you know, leaving the life that I had always known, the mother and father figure that I had in my mom and dad, and missing my dad, I moved into, you know, a new home and a new environment and an entirely new life as an adolescent with my stepfather. And, you know, his way of showing love was a lot more authoritarian. And it didn't really, to me, I came from a totally different dynamic of parenting. So for me, it actually felt, it felt really difficult. And it kind of, to me, I didn't associate it with the love that I had known. So it was really challenging. And what I decided when I got there was, and honestly, after my parents' divorce, what I decided was, I'm going to be strong. You know, I think socially we also kind of learned that, like, toughen up. You know, even though I was a girl, nobody encouraged me to cry or feel my emotions or anything like that. And so I decided to be strong. And I witnessed my little sister in immense struggle and feeling all of her emotions and seeing how hard that was for her to just feel everything. And then to see the way that that affected my mother by seeing her be in pain and just all the dynamics of divorce and separation. Like, it's so much emotion and so much energy. And I didn't want to be another thing that created challenge for anybody. I was very empathic as a little girl, like being able to see, you know, the movements in people's energies and emotions and experiences. And I just didn't want to put any of my pain or suffering onto anyone else. And so
the problem with that is it puts you in a really dark place because you have no outlet for all of those feelings that you have, everything that you're holding inside, this dam that's holding back all of the waters of all these emotions. You're just going stronger, 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 and not sharing anything, thinking that you're doing somebody a favor, but ultimately it's not if they actually love you, you know, and not if you actually love yourself. It's not for the best.
Yeah. And it's a really punishing thing to internalize your emotional experience, because those things exist within you if you repress them, you know, specifically if you repress them. Like they just really
strengthen it within you.
Yeah. And kind of the constructs that come from not expressing. I mean, at the time, I felt anger a lot at things that felt unfair to me. And instead of expressing, you know, vocally, emotionally, any kind of energy that had to do with the anger I was feeling, I would just hold it. I would just hold it. So then it eventually, I mean, it essentially became directed at me. Mm-hmm. And so I just became to get more and more isolated in life. Like, I had friends, but I had nobody to talk to about anything that I was experiencing. But I also wouldn't express any of what I was experiencing, trying to hold the container together for everybody else. So I was just in this like cave of suffering by myself, incredibly, like I said, just incredibly isolated. And it was incredibly hard for me.
Hard enough that you thought about hitting the reset button.
Yeah. I mean, there were times that I didn't want to do it anymore. I felt so alone and not seen that I just had suicidal thoughts. Like, what if I was no longer here? How would they feel? Would they see me then? Would they miss me then? Could they notice this like immense suffering that I'm experiencing if I was gone? And in a really weird way, that was the way that I learned how to, that kind of envisioning process was how I learned how to access the love that I was looking for.
What a crazy thing. And I think it's so common that the ego is so desperate for love, desires it so much that it will even consider ending this life so that in its imagined future state, it can harness and harvest all of that love that it's craving and that it's missing. I mean, just to show you how much we really, really, really are craving love.
Yeah. And it's hard as an adolescent who is learning their way in the world. You know, so many things are changing. You're going through puberty, dynamics, social dynamics are shifting. You're learning how to relate to yourself, how to communicate, how to feel, how to be. And I felt so lost and so deeply alone.
It seems like we develop all of these strategies to just, once we have that initial loss of love, we develop all of these strategies to try and get love. And even this, you know, the idea that you didn't want your mom to hurt is certainly one aspect of it, but there's probably the other aspect that you thought that if you were strong, your mom would love you more.
Yeah.
You know, so it was another strategy to just get as much love as possible. Maybe because you saw how your mom reacted to your sister and that was difficult for her. And in difficult times, it's hard to express that love freely. So like, oh, okay, that strategy doesn't work. Well, this strategy will work. I'll be strong. I'll suck it up and I'll get whatever love I can.
Yeah.
But it's all just this incessant cycle for how can I get as much love as possible?
Yeah. And the defense mechanisms that started to come into play at that point of my life was the suffering that I felt and loneliness that I felt was so great that I learned very well how to just shut off. I learned how to just numb it all out. And for a while, like, dating when I was in my 20s, I thought that was my superpower because that gave me some sense of control over experiences. But just, thinking of all of the ways that we start to build these defense mechanisms of protection.
And so that what you're talking about is the ability to just shut off the pain.
Yeah.
You could just completely shut down,
I just
power
numb it.
down the system and power down. And that's a defense mechanism that's lasted up until, I don't know, a little earlier this year.
Yeah.
I've seen that defense mechanism too. It's these patterns, they take a while to unravel. But you mentioned when you started dating, take us down that journey, because eventually we stop craving love from our parents so much and we start craving it from the opposite sex. The hormones kick in and we start craving that love from in the physical from other people romantically.
And I've always been like a bleeding heart. Like I've always loved so much. So I really, entered into every relationship like, this is going to be my fairy tale. This is going to be
This is the one.
This is the one. And there was just so many dysfunctional and codependent patterns in me already of relating to love, primarily the idea of having to compete for it. And that was like an inner story, from being 2.5 years old. I have to compete for love. And so what that ended up doing was I co-created experiences and attracted partners to my life where I did have to compete for love. So there was always another girl. There was always this like horrible moment of just, oh my God. And I could even remember it, just the moment of betrayal when you just, that ball just drops on you. And I just remember being like in the fetal position, shaking, like asking why, because it was so painful.
Yeah, because when you find out that your person you love is seeing somebody else, there's not only that feeling, there's the betrayal, there's the reevaluation. There's so many things that come crashing down on you in that one moment. And you've had more than your fair share of those experiences. And
they started to, the story that kind of cycled through me in relation to all of those was, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of being chosen. It doesn't matter the way I love, the way that I, bring myself into everything. I'm not worthy.
I'm fucked up. And that's the reason why everybody's cheating on me and nobody will choose me.
Yeah.
It's a natural thing to do. We all do that.
Well, there was also, at the time, because I wasn't as aware of myself and my psyche and my inner workings and stories, I felt very victim. I didn't really look at those experiences as actually serving me, to mirror the parts in me that weren't really resonating with love or the integrity with my soul. Like they were trying to paint these pictures for me and be like, here's this moment where you can no longer look for the external validation, but really love yourself and have compassion for yourself. But it's, as a young person or people that aren't really taught certain ways of being, it just feels like the world is happening to me.
It's such a beautiful thing to be reminded of, that perhaps all that's happening is as you reach, with that kind of craving for a love externally from somebody else, then the universe was continually slapping you on the hand like, no,
Yeah.
No. And you're like, "Oh, okay, I'll reach a different way.
Yeah.
I'll come with the underhand grip. And they'll never slap my hand away because the back of my hand is not exposed and the universe comes from the ground. Smack.
Yeah.
And hits you in the back of the hand still. And you're like, what the fuck, universe? Like, I keep trying all these different ways, but you're not internalized. You're not getting the lesson. You're not getting the message, which is, hey, girl, love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Love yourself first.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think, as you said, we need to be teaching everybody, and we need to learn ourselves, because self-love is a process. It's not like all of us, oh yeah, we all know this. I've listened to enough podcasts and I read a book here or two, and I know how to love yourself. I mean, I have a really clear understanding that despite my vast knowledge of self-love, less than a year ago, I thought I loved myself, and I realized I absolutely didn't. Absolutely didn't. At 38 years old, still not loving myself hardly at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of these things that we might hear it and think, yeah, sure, I love myself, but maybe not. Maybe we're still looking constantly, just as we are as children, with all of these strategies to get as much love as you can from as many sources as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely one of the reasons why I was so interested in polyamory, because I was so desperate for love because I wasn't giving myself enough.
Yeah.
That I needed to get it, not just from one person, but from at least 3. Because then but then you know what? Even when I had it from 3, like the 4th would be the one that did it. I had no time. It was like incredibly impossible to even manage the 2 or 3 or whatever. But I was like, but that 4th one though. Is the one.
Yeah.
And it's because just I wasn't fully loving myself. And sure, there's a lot of fun and a lot of beauty in different experiences with different people. And all of that is great. But fundamentally, that drive came from, I need more love. I need more love. And where did that drive come from? Well, it came from a deficit.
Yeah.
And the deficit in my own ability to truly love myself.
Mm-hmm. I think there's also a level of something that I mentioned earlier of that way of thinking is kind of like love is limited as well.
Mm-hmm.
When like love is in everything. Like some of the greatest teachers that I've had was not a mentor or somebody speaking to me. It was literally me in nature with music and a journal, and to feel into what love is from the universe, divine love that comes from within you and explodes out to everything else. That's abundant love.
Yeah. That's the great beloved, as Rumi writes about, right? And all of the Sufi poets will talk to you about it. And through their poetry, they'll talk about accessing that greater love, that capital L love, which is everywhere and found in everything, so that you're not dependent on these particular sources that you get love from. And you're not, of course, the other aspect is dependent upon the validation to make you worthy of love in your own mind, which could be business or money or success or all of these different things. So it's like sources, validation, all of these things. It all comes back to that fundamental drive that we have to feel love, and all of the strategies and all the pathologies that have been created from our conditioning that make that difficult to truly just rest in love.
Yeah.
And I think if we hadn't gone on our journey, we wouldn't be sitting here.
No.
Like we had to find that love through all the trials and tribulations. We had to find that love for ourselves first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like an aphorism, a spiritual maxim. Before you love anyone else, you must truly love yourself. You're like, yeah, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
next fortune cookie, like whatever. But like, it's fucking true.
It's
it happens.
so true. Yeah. And the way that it lands when you actually feel it is different. Like I think that people intellectualize what that means. It's like, how does it feel? Like, do you really feel love for yourself when you're waking up in the morning and you love talking about, we're so funny in the morning. For some reason, I have insane sleep and I wake up with the most puffiest face. It looks like I ate something that I'm the most allergic to. And
like you ate a swarm of bees.
Am I loving myself in that moment? Is my love conditional upon doing, being, looking, and that's like a really great practice of just awareness in those moments.
The thing that you love the least about yourself is the ceiling on your self-love.
Mm.
So like everybody take that in for a moment, because whatever that thing is that you judge, that's your limiting factor.
Mm-hmm.
The thing you love the least, that's your ceiling, because you'll never go above that ceiling, because you have to lift that to raise the entire universal bar of your self-love. So if you didn't love your puffy eyes, or you didn't love the way your body looked, or your voice sounded, or this thing about yourself, well, that's the limit on the amount of love that you have for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you start, one way to do it is start working on loving those things that you love the least.
Yeah.
And maybe the insignificant things, the things that you just brush over, that you don't even consider your own. And that could be psychological. That could be those things that we're ashamed about in our psychology, maybe our jealousies, maybe our anger that we try to like push aside and justify and all of these things. But that's not the way. The way is to love those things.
Yeah.
All of those things.
Yeah. I to touch on kind of the more shadowy or dark part of my life is from suppressing my emotion for so long, I had about, in my spiritual awakening journey, I had about 1.5 years of just immense anger and rage at the experiences that I was having. Like every moment that I had that I just never experienced it would come up and out of me, and to even look at myself, afterwards I would feel so ashamed and so guilty, and it turned into this vicious cycle of just like self-hatred and judgment, when what it was asking for all along was for me to love that too, to love my humanness, to know that darkness is on the spectrum of light. Like your lightest light is polarized by your deepest darkness. And I had to deeply meet those aspects of myself that I had rejected and kept hidden for so long, thinking I'm always going to be light and happy and, easygoing and passive and whatever. But it's not really honoring the full embodiment of your humanness.
All kinds of things get fucked up when we have a strong identification with a certain aspect or expression of our being. If we think that we're always supposed to be happy and we're always supposed to be, have emotional control, and when those other things come up, we'll either ignore them, stuff them, deny them, pretend they're not there, distract, or if they happen, then we'll shame them, which embeds them further, rather than allowing them to look at them. And as you said, the invitation to love those things away, like use the actual counterforce of energy, which is love, to actually unwind those things and allow them the space to unravel these tangles in our psyche. Because we know so many people, and it's just the human nature that if you're deeply attached to a particular identity of yourself, you just won't even see another aspect.
Yeah.
You'll just project every single thing onto everybody else that's actually coming from you, because you were unwilling to look at you. Why? Because you'll judge yourself too harshly. You'll remove your own self-love. So it's another strategy to keep us from that internal judge, from casting that decision, say, not looking at it, this isn't happening, or explaining it and justifying it in such a way that like, well, of course I got angry. Did you see what they did?
For sure. Look at the entire life of all of our relationships.
Sure.
Like trying to preserve the ego's identity with like, no, I'm good. No, I have to be right. No, like just battling in codependency. So much struggle and challenge. And, what you said about love kind of being the thing that sets you free. I mean, it absolutely is. It liberates fear. It liberates you into total sovereignty and joy and ecstasis and so much more than you ever thought possible. Like part of a lot of the practices that I used in coming to a place of love for myself that wasn't so conditional was, one, I started writing to myself in my journal the way that I speak to other people, because I'm very loving, and I see the beauty in the world, and I see the beauty in other people. And that's always been the lens that I've looked at life through, which on some level is beautiful. And then in other, in other experiences, it got me into some shit. But I started writing to myself the way that I speak to other people. I started writing to myself in the loving way that I encourage, somebody else in their tough moments, how to believe in themselves, how to see through the darkness. And, that became a practice for me. And that was kind of what started to open it. And then even somatic things, like I literally all the time hug myself, like
Aww.
deeply hug myself. And I focus on the energy that I give when I'm hugging another. I'm a huge hugger. I love the most squishy hug, holding forever. And I started to do that with myself, which might seem silly, but there's an energy that kind of comes from doing that, especially in low moments. Somatic tools like that are really helpful.
There's one that's actually called havening, in which you go into a traumatic memory or something that's challenging, and you actually start rubbing your own arms. So you cross your hand and start rubbing the top of your arms.
Yeah.
And in this really soothing way,
Like
as
a
you're going
mother
through it, like a mother would,
Yeah.
and just kind of repatterning the feeling of safety, that you're able to provide yourself with that memory, and reprogramming your mind itself. So you're actually able to move through some of these things.
Well, I think that is what is being asked of us, is to be the nurturing, loving mother and father to ourselves, to our inner child, that didn't experience love in a way that was, that we needed maybe. And in being able to do that, how sovereign does that make you? To no longer, to be in a low moment, and obviously community and support and all of that is so important and necessary. But to be in a low moment and need something outside of you, that's always giving your power away to something else. But what if I could be the loving mother to the part of me that's really scared in a moment, that might have a reaction in anger or a reaction in judgment or defensiveness or whatever. What if I could nurture and nourish myself?
That's a cheat code to the game of life.
Yeah.
For sure. You get that. All right, let's fast forward to Burning Man. Let's fast forward to Burning Man, because this is a moment, and I'm so grateful that I got to be there for these key moments in your journey to universal love. And this was a big moment for you. You had transitioned, you'd gone off and done all the different things, from bottle service to all the work things after school, and all the relationships up and down, all the tumult and all of the conditioning that comes from that. You have to look a certain way, you have to be pretty, you have to
LA
sell
life.
bottles, all the LA stuff. And then you get to Burning Man, and it's a different thing out there on the playa, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I always call it the place where I found that I had wings and that I could fly. At Burning Man, it is radical self-expression and acceptance. Everybody is going there in their eccentric way of being, and nobody's looking at anything with judgment. Well, you're supposed to kind of dress this way to go out to dinner and wear heels. It's just what does my soul want to express? And for me, that freedom, if you've seen my Instagram, it looks like I live at Burning Man, and I like physically to just be free and sexual and sensual, and that's my being. So to be so free in a place and have people's response be so much love, that holy crap, the way that I dance is more, the way that I speak is different, the way that I express, it's just I have never known what this is, to not have constructs in a container that I'm putting myself in. And it was so liberating.
Also the first time you did psilocybin.
Also the first time that I did psilocybin. And that was a game changer on so many levels. Because the awareness that I started to feel in my body about what I would put, the energy that I would put into it, what I'm eating, what I'm drinking, the way that I relate to music and how I could feel it moving through me and wanting to express it in all of the, movements and going absolutely ham. It just, it opened me up to a totally different way of being.
So I met you there. And I was in my 3 girlfriend stage at that point, and you were that number 4. You were the 4. You were the number 4.
Leave that over there.
This number 4. And I was actually right. That's the funny part. This number 4 was the actual one that was going to do it. But that was not me being intuitive, or maybe it was. But nonetheless, like, I was certainly interested, but, you were not interested in diving into, my polyamory.
I actually didn't even know when we were at Burning Man that you were in an open relationship. I had no idea what that even meant. I'd never heard of that. I had never heard of polyamory. And so sometime when you would come and like dance with me, I'm like, my God, I felt so uncomfortable. I'm like, his girlfriend is right there. This is so inappropriate. What a creep. But then we also, beyond that, in my kind of aloof mind, we had a really incredible bonding experience where I was having a conversation, and it was with you and Whitney and Caitlin. And you were telling me how Caitlin was your former fiance. And that to me was like this huge light bulb moment, because I always felt in love and relationship, when things end, there's this like dramatic black and white, divorce, separation, everything has to be separate. And for me, that never resonated. Like, I always loved the person exactly the way that I did when we were together. It just felt like our relationship evolved into something different, which could be a friendship and being allies and continuing to support each other in a way that's just not intimate.
Yeah.
And that's what I always felt in my heart, but I had never seen it before. So for you guys to be telling me about your experience, I'm like, this is how it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
Or this is how I'd like to see it work.
I think it is how it's supposed to work, because love shouldn't, it doesn't go anywhere. That's the thing. Like, sometimes we wait so long in relationship that we actually resent the person so much that we can't love them at all anymore. But like, where's the love supposed to go? It's supposed to just evaporate, I mean, understandably, being sexually intimate with somebody needs a transition, because that can bring a lot of things up, that sexual intimacy. But absolutely, for me and Caitlin, we had to take our time after we separated. We were engaged, separated, and then took a little time, but stayed in touch. And then within 2 years or so, we were starting to build a best friendship again. And now her and Kyle are my best friends in the world. And it's continued that. And that was the way it was in Burning Man. But I remember that moment in the RV where you're like, wait, this is Whitney, your partner, and then this is Caitlin, your ex-fiance, and they seem to be genuinely really good friends.
Freaking love each other.
They love each other.
They're having so much fun, and there's no drama. It's just all awesomeness.
Sure, and I really do believe that's the way it should work. And hopefully that's the way that it will, continue to work for many people as this paradigm of love starts to shift. At the very least, like doing some of that self-work to release that jealousy and to also make sure that there's not any hidden agendas and hidden secret things. I think truth is obviously really important
for sure
with all that. Well, you got to experience a little bit of that, and we got to kind of get to know each other just a smidgen, but enough for me to have a feeling like, all right, I was organizing a big trip to go down to see Don Howard in Peru. We were going to do ayahuasca and wachuma, and I invited you to that. And that was, about 6 weeks or so after Burning Man. And you said yes. You're like, all right, I'm in.
I left that one to the universe. I mean, I didn't think I could get out the time. I had all these excuses. I felt so called to ayahuasca. I had never heard of wachuma, but ayahuasca had been on my radar. Like, there were these perfect moments in conversation with people talking about their experiences with ayahuasca and plant medicine, where, I could see a palpable shift in their being, before and after. And there was this part of me that was like, I want that, like, I'm searching for meaning and more purpose. And I really want to know what that experience is like. So it was kind of something that had, been a blip on my radar. And then when you came, with the offer to join you guys, it felt like it was just too divinely orchestrated to pass up. And, it ended up being really easy to get there. And that was a peak moment in my
take us to that, because there's one moment in particular. I mean, obviously we could tell that story for a whole podcast. There's so much that happens in ayahuasca and Wachuma. There was a peak moment on Wachuma where you really started to grasp in a very physical, somatic way the love of what Rumi would call the great beloved, the jungle itself, the indigenous, everything else. So take us to that moment in the jungle.
Yeah. We journeyed down into the Amazon and had the blessing to meet this indigenous people. And their tribal leader was this older woman. And it was perfect because my grandmother had just passed away. And a lot of what I was there for was searching for her. And when we got there, the tribal woman gave me a hug. And I felt so overwhelmed with love. I mean, I was sobbing. Like, it was a moment, and we're holding each other. It felt like hugging my grandmother again. And I like I said, I was so overwhelmed. I had to walk away from everyone because I felt like I couldn't even walk. I just needed to take a moment and just be present with what I was feeling. And I realized as my eyes stopped watering enough that I could see, that I could feel everything around me. I could feel how everything was so intricately connected to the thing next to it, how the trees communicate with each other and share water, this intelligent system of being. And that I was part of that, and that I could really truly tap into the essence of anything. I could, put my hand on a tree and I could feel its life. I could feel decay. I could feel burning, and the whole rest of that day, we went to, if you've ever been to Spirit Quest, you go to this place called the Enchanted Stream, and it's one of the most beautiful places in the entire world. And I just...
Especially through the eyes of Wachuma,
yeah.
which makes everything the most beautiful thing in the world.
Yeah, for sure. And there were parts of it that were hilarious and relating and talking to people, but the biggest part for me was just being and just feeling that every single moment of my entire life happened intricately, perfectly to get me to that moment. Every pain, every challenge, every failure, every success, every joy, every love and relationship, everything happened perfectly to get me to that moment. Because in that moment, I no longer wondered what I was here for. I no longer wondered what God meant to me. And that was a gift, and it was so visceral. It wasn't like this intellectualized, it's kind of hard to describe, but it's just a knowing, and it's a feeling, and it's a being.
That's the thing with God. Very hard to describe. Much better when you feel it.
Yeah. And it was so beautiful. Like everything to me in that moment was beautiful. Like there were bugs everywhere, and they were crawling on me. And my biggest fear in the world is centipedes. And I literally was like, I will bathe in you. If you come, you're Mother Earth, and everything's connected, and we're connected, and let's sing to each other, and let's all be together. Like that's how in love I felt. It was completely void of fear. And I just trusted in the essence of being and why I chose to be a human being.
Yeah. Well, that was in many ways a challenging trip for me because of, a lot of the dynamics that I had in my polyamory. But I remember seeing you go through that experience and thinking like, well, this might have been totally fucked for me, but it was really good for Vi. So at least it wasn't a total loss. But ultimately it brought a lot of healing to myself and to, everybody involved. And that's the way these medicines work. Sometimes in the experience, they're hard, but later on you start to learn how valuable they really are.
For sure.
So then, all right, coming closer to the story of us getting together here. So the next, we stayed really close throughout the rest of that year, but you're still living out in California. So we just saw each other when we could see each other. Mm-hmm. And another big moment was we went back to Burning Man together. This time you were in our camp. And there was a moment where, with incredible gratitude to Whitney and the construct of our open relationship, I had the opportunity to, for the only time before we got together, bridge the gap of intimacy. And we got to share some intimacy. And, we danced and had more fun. You understood that I was in a polyamorous relationship, but you still never really danced too much with me, just a little bit. Just kind of a little taste.
Oh, I like you, but be a little bit farther away.
Yeah, for sure. But
I'm going to go over here.
In that, after our, kind of moment of intimacy, I had one of the strangest things that has never happened before, never happened since. And, granted, everybody, Burning Man, there's a lot of psychedelic drugs being taken there, but I've done a lot of psychedelic drugs for the last 21 years. So this is not like of my first experience on mushrooms and I saw something. Like, I've never had this experience before where there was a blinding white star right in my third eye when I had my eyes open or had my eyes closed, and nothing I did could get rid of this vision, this open-eyed and closed-eyed vision of this blinding white star. And I was so astounded by that experience. And now looking back, like the only thing I can attribute it to was like some part, either my own higher self, my soul, the divine, all of which might be synonymous in certain ways, but just kind of like put an asterisk on that moment and was like, hey boy, like, don't forget this, like, do not forget this moment because this is important, and of course it was a lovely experience, but that moment was this kind of thing where I was like, whoa, that was this first kind of cosmic wink of like, this is something extraordinary, and this is something that's different than anything that I've experienced before.
I had also had my own, back to our first journey to Peru, I had my own kind of wink of a moment too, where at the end of that beautiful day that I just described in the Enchanted Stream, we were closing ceremony and we were all standing at the mesa and, all 18 of us. And at one point we were standing across from each other and we started to eye gaze, which, I think that was probably the first time that I did it. And for a little while it was kind of uncomfortable, but then, to just surrender and deepen into it, I really understood the words, I see you, like, oh my God, I love Avatar so much. And that and that made sense to me because I could see your light. I could see your dark. I could see all the shadow and the brilliance and the pain and the love and wisdom, just everything beaming out of you. And I don't think before that in life I could ever really say that about somebody. And I knew in that moment that, we were always going to be allies. I just had no idea it was going to turn out like this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that was, so after that moment at Burning Man, you were in different relationships that, for the next few years, but I started to express to you, that I had really strong feelings for you. And then I could see, I started to be able to see a potential future with you. And at some point, and you were still, I think, because of my own polyamory and because of all of the ways that you had partnered with different people and in different partnerships, and you're very devoted once you're in a partnership, you weren't really open to exploring that. Ironically, you had your own polyamory experience while avoiding mine, which is like the universe is like, oh
this
yeah.
This one is okay, but you're not. Stay over there.
But one of the points I sent you a letter.
Yeah.
And this was a point where, I was like, look, I gotta lay it out and I gotta let you know what I feel. And so I thought we could share that letter because that'll give people an idea of kind of where my head was at.
Your beautiful, romantic, bleeding heart. Ah, yes, let's do it.
So I wrote the letter, and the way that I structured the letter was, it was two letters. It was a letter from me to her, and then a hypothetical letter from her to me in response. And it was just me kind of really almost channeling this understanding of what I thought our love might be. Of course, I didn't know. We had a brief, intimate moment at Burning Man, and other than that, we just had a friendship. So I wrote this letter. Dear Vylana, what would it feel like to know that you were chosen beyond a doubt? How would it feel to be fully seen for the full potential of who you are? How would it feel to be with someone who could hold the fire of you as your hottest burning star and turn it into the warmth of a smile and a laugh? How would it feel to have a partner who could hold your hand all the way up to the moon, where you could shine your medicine on all mankind? What would it feel like to be cherished for every smell, for every kiss, for every cuddle, and for every touch? How would your heart feel to never worry that you were too much or not enough? What would it feel like to have a brave king fighting with every breath for the good of all, who melted to heal in the arms of his queen? What would it feel like to have a child in your belly, knowing that it was coming into a world of peace and love deeper than any fairy tale ever told? How would it feel to know your king has traveled into the darkest corners of his ocean, and there are no monsters they are hiding left to sting and bite you? How would it feel to be able to be truly free and wild?
That made me really emotional. Dear Aubrey, what would it feel like to look into your partner's eyes and know that you are always seen? What would it feel like to have a partner who could sing your soul awake and caress a tired body to rest? What would it feel like to be with someone who is here with you now, not lost in the distractions of a busy world or needing alcohol to blanket those things too scary to look at? What would it feel like to have a queen with the same mission to heal the world as you, her king? What would it feel like to be truly inspired by the one you loved? To have a woman who knew the truth of things not from her mind, but from her soul? What would it feel like to have someone who loved you not for what you were able to do, but for who you are able to be? What would it feel like to be with someone who knew she was worthy of all the love you had inside, the love of the whole universe? What would it feel like to look into the eyes of the mother of your children, to have a woman you would be honored to call wife and honored to have call you husband? How alive would you feel, dancing in a unity of sweat and drum beats with your greatest love? How much more of who you are could you become if you had a woman like that? What sacrifice would you be willing to make for that woman? Gosh.
And then I close the letter by saying, I'm not writing this because I know the answer to these questions. I don't know if I could be that man for you, and I don't know if you could be that woman for me, but I wonder. I have always wondered if that was so. I wonder, too, why you haven't thought the same. Perhaps my skin suit is just not quite right to make your own skin sing. Perhaps you're afraid to look at the possibility for some reason or another. Perhaps you like the chase of winning someone who will not fully choose you. Perhaps you think that I wouldn't fully choose you. Perhaps you see a truth deeper than I am able to see, and it is I who is blinded by the fantasy of an idea. If you ask it of me, this will be the last word I say about it. I will be your loyal ally and love and support not just you, but whoever you choose as king, always. I will always be okay. I will find my queen in the body of someone else, or in the stars, the trees, the grasses, and the clouds. But my heart bids me to send this to you. If this stirs something in you, the practicality and any real-world progression towards this idea can be an open dialogue, sensitive to everyone who would be affected. If the idea does not stir anything in you, or there is not an alignment in timing to even discuss it, I bless that response equally as well. I love you always, boo. Aub.
Man. You're so sweet. It was so moving to feel so seen. Especially, in the challenge and the struggle that I had been in for a really long time, trying to, make love work for me in relationship. And, at the time I still had a lot that I needed to settle in my life. So I wasn't open to it fully. It was incredibly moving to me, but it didn't fully settle into me. Reading it in this moment and the moments that I read it after, the tears were just streaming from my face to feel love that is
You could have
so
for sure showed me like one of those tears though, like I was out there in a damn desert. There was nothing. I was like, crickets.
Oh my
Sweet.
God.
I love crickets. Crickets are great.
I love crickets. Crickets are the universe. Crickets are my queen.
But, I think as you're saying, like some part of you, I guess wasn't quite ready to receive that. And I gave the space for that as well.
Yeah. And that was something that was so beautiful about our relationship, and something that always anchored for me in relating to the masculine is you were always unconditional. You didn't withdraw love because I didn't give it to you in the way that you were seeking. You just were always there as my ally, showing up with the most love and reminding me of who I am, of being magnificent and being big and shining my light on the world. Like you always reminded me of truth. And that sense of unconditionality was so immense for me, because I don't think I had ever truly known that before you.
Yeah, it's, I've certainly had my moments where some part of me wanted to be fussy and frustrated and like, but I would never express that. I had a much deeper commitment, and I think that deeper commitment to just loving you and no matter what was what allowed this to happen. But I think before that could even happen, I really had to completely let go of the idea that we would be anything. And I did so much so that, and it was difficult because I felt like I could see the potentiality of us together, but you wouldn't see it. And so I had, massive conflict with God at that point. I was like, this is fucked. Like I can see something that's so beautiful, but I believed at that time that I was never going to get a chance to explore it. And I was like, this is fucked, whatever. And so I had that, and that was, I think, something that was difficult, but I just kept that aspect to myself and just honored all of your choices and everything that you were deciding to do, and really just let it go and just moved on. And of course, your mind will, to try and soften the blow, I would try and find, as hard as I could, try and find some flaw in you. Like, she's just doing ceremony all the time. She doesn't even like to have fun.
Her breath probably smells in the morning, and she looks like a big puppy face, probably.
I don't think that would have got the job done. I had to try and conjure, because of course, it's like some way I had to try and make this something that I could tolerate. And of course, that eventually came crashing down pretty shortly. But it was so much so that even when I went to my darkness retreat, which is a massive, pivotal moment for me, where I got to commune with all of the souls, all of the ideas of different people that I would have these conversations with in the darkness in my own head, I would try to reach out to you and have a conversation, but I could never form any connection with you. And that's strange because we're incredibly connected.
Yeah.
But like I could not form.
We were even really connected before.
For sure.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I just couldn't form any connection with you. And I think it was because I wasn't supposed to see what was coming. And I wasn't supposed to, it was just, I needed to handle and sort out everything else. I needed to learn how to love myself. I needed to learn lessons even about how to love in orientation towards Whitney, because we were still at that point, even though we were broken up, we still love each other, and I'll love her forever, always. But I had to learn to love her exactly as she was rather than loving what she could be. And that was a huge lesson about how to love somebody, was just to love them, not for their potential, but love them for the absolute actuality of who they are moment to moment. And so I had to learn all of these lessons that if I was like, holy shit, I connected with Vi, and that would have circumvented and undermined the whole experience that unfolded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was really surprised that you couldn't connect with me at all. It's like, I thought we had a really deep relationship and I love you so much, and that sucks, but okay.
So fast forward again, and then, so, I, as I said, completely, kind of given up any hope of us ever being anything. You were having a lot of challenge with your partner, and, you, as you did from time to time, you would come over and stay at my house up in the guest room.
Always, often.
Yeah, when there would be challenge. And so you let me know that was happening. I had already planned a date with somebody that night. So like
you were just going to go about your business.
Yeah, for sure.
Basically.
So the date comes over and I'm like in moments just covered in her makeup all over the place. I was like, hey, Vi, see you in the morning, maybe.
I'm going to go upstairs and you guys have fun.
And so like just speaking to this idea that I had no strategy. I had nothing.
Yeah.
I had nothing to gain or lose with you being there. It was just like you were my roommate buddy for the next indefinite amount of days. So I get home the next day and I see you there and you're just kind of hanging out, not doing anything particularly too important for my purview. So I was like, hey, you want to drop into a ketamine meditation, which is a practice that both of us have started to explore at that point. And you're like, sure. I was like, all right. So we put on the same music, listening to the same music. And that was the moment that it was done.
Yeah.
Whatever we almost, it was almost like we still had choice, but
it didn't feel like choice.
But the isness of what it was so overwhelming. So we go into this journey, and ketamine is a powerful disassociative, which removes you from your body and gives you access to your consciousness, your soul, your awareness, whatever that is that travels the non-physical dimensions. And within 12 minutes, I had the undeniable experience that you and I were completely in union. Just married, union, not in like the contractual sense, but just togetherness.
Yeah, like the eternal parts of ourselves. That was my experience was the same. It was at the time I had felt an incredible wholeness in myself and all the work that I had done for so many years trying to come into a place of just peace and harmony and love in myself. And I was feeling that very much as a sovereign being. But that experience was showing what union meant in partnership. And it was showing me you in all the ways that we've danced together in different forms and lives and felt really just like an undeniable truth. And I remember coming out of it like neither of us were expecting that at all. We just went into
what
it.
What the hell just happened?
As friends, we've had pretty powerful experiences together in medicine. So, I figured it would just be like a, expansive experience, but it was so much more than that. I remember coming out of it and being like, what was your experience like? Oh my God. I don't know if I'm ready for knowing this.
For sure. And like everything was good in my life. It was actually like a really good point. And like,
I think we both were like the way that we were connecting before that, both of us kind of had the same prayer for what we wanted to experience in love. And this was just as friends, speaking about it in terms that wasn't directed at each other. And we both, I think, were in incredible places in ourselves.
I had been talking about my desire to transition from polyamory into sacred union. And even on Whitney's podcast, again, we were broken up and open about talking about all these things. Like, yeah, I'm interested in monogamy next and sacred union, understanding what that is, like having some aspect of relationship that's so sacred and so important that it always comes first, that there's nothing that's challenging it. There's nothing that takes you away from that. And I'd been craving that. And I think you'd been craving that as well, having your own experience with polyamory as well, where you had to share attention and share that kind of love with somebody else.
Yeah, which was incredibly hard. It was there's so much love and so much incredibly accelerated learning, but so hard. And I met two of my best friends that live here in Austin, my friends Dan and Micra, and their love was like nothing I had ever seen before. Deepening into relationships with both of them, we're so on the same wavelength of the way that we see the world and the way that we venture into ourselves, and to be really, intimately present with their love. It showed me a possibility of something that I had never seen before. Like, honestly, thinking back to it, there wasn't a model of a relationship in any couple that I knew, personally, or, famous people or anything like that, where I was like, that's the kind of love I want.
Right.
Not,
you
at
don't
all.
see a lot of examples of it. You see a lot of dishonesty. You see a lot of resentment. You see a lot of workarounds. You see a lot of complaining to the girls about your guy when you're there. Guys complaining to the guys about their girl, and
So
then
much
desiring
judgment.
other things. And that was one of the reasons that drew me into polyamory anyways, is because I didn't see this shit working. I didn't see like good examples of like, oh yeah, that monogamous couple, they're really fucking killing it. They seem super happy.
They are miserable.
Yeah. And that's typically what we see.
Yeah.
And I honestly still hadn't particularly seen that until, you introduced me to Dan and Micro as well. That was another good example for me where I got to kind of see that from them. But I still had this idea, like I'd really explored polyamory as deep as I could take it, as far as I could go.
You did it real good.
I fucking went for it, just stumbling through blindly, trying to figure everything out, which I'm incredibly grateful for.
What medicine for the world, though.
For sure. I mean, I can really speak on that, with deep experience in my own shadow, my own jealousies, the challenges, the struggles. I mean, ultimately coming to this idea that it's a beautiful philosophy that just doesn't typically work in practice, kind of like communism, right? Like, it's beautiful, share everything. That's great. But it's taking out of account human nature. And human nature doesn't work in that way. Like, we're self-motivated and our egos are strong, and maybe in some hypothesized utopian future, everything could be polyamorous and everything could be communist. We just work together and share everything, including our love, including our children and all that. But fucking in our world now, trying to do that shit is hard. That shit is real hard. And I got to learn that from experience, and obviously take that experience and apply it to, of course, now what we have now, and understand and take the lessons about myself and about partnership. So, that was great. And you got to, in your own way, have your own experiences, of that in a certain way, although you didn't take it as deep as I did.
Definitely not as deep as you.
But emotionally challenging as anything that I experienced.
Yeah, emotionally the deepest. I mean, talk about feeling all the feelings in seeing yourself in all the ways, and all, in all of it. Something that I really recognized in myself, just in the container, and this is without judgment for anyone who I believe people could thrive in that container. I think it depends on the individual,
sure,
but I think for me, I wasn't really honoring my needs for like stability and this, like you said, this sacredness, the part that's just like so devoted that nothing else can penetrate and disrupt.
That you would fold absolutely everything else.
Yeah.
That there is nothing else that you would hold higher than your love in union with that person. That's what's sacred, right? Like everything, you can say everything is sacred, which it is. Everything is sacred. But to declare something as sacred, there has to be a separation in the separation from the rest of the things. And that's what makes it sacred. And the separation of this union from the rest of any unions, partnerships, ideas, or things like that, that's what makes a sacred union sacred. It's just, you fold all other cards, you fold everything to the ace. If something is troubling in the sacred union, you get rid of it. You remove that, unless it's an opportunity for growth.
I also kind of look at it too as like, love is this way that's expanding outward when you're bringing in other partners and, relating in these ways, which can be like a lot of energy. What if you took all of that energy and you deepened, what if you took that love and you like went down into the depths of the ocean with it in tantra and, like these co-creative practices, and that I had never known before. And I was, my heart was calling me, my soul was calling me to it. And so to see once again, people who are living that and seeing possibility, I knew then what I wanted, and I started to pray for it. Without attachment. I pray a lot, and it's not in a, I just speak to the universe what I want, and I speak my gratitude, and I speak what it is I would like to experience, what it is I would like to feel. And I wanted to feel cherished. I wanted to feel love in a way that was spiritual and deep and just, unimaginable. And I was making those prayers, and then you popped in.
And then we did our journey. But I had done such a good job convincing myself that you were no longer any fun. And that Burning Man girl that I used to know that would dance all free and be wild and free, and that person was gone. So after that experience we had on ketamine, I was like, let's just go dancing. Just as friends, like, let's just go dancing and then let's see. And really, I have to admit that there was certainly a bit of an ulterior motive. I wanted to see if you were fun. I wanted to see if you were still fun.
She might suck, and this could actually
she might have lost it.
Yeah, this
she
could
might have,
actually
the
be
greatest
fun.
dancer I've ever seen might have lost it. I don't know. I didn't know. So we go out dancing, and I got on my Sinbad earring, my one sword earring.
So cute, you and your little character.
Yeah, and then we
Yes.
go out dancing, and it's a really like dope place here in town. It's more like a dance hall vibe. It's sweaty, it's dark,
It's super
great
swanky.
music.
Yeah,
It's like
great music.
yeah. And so it's playing like reggaeton and hip hop and this kind of Latin.
It was actually, to me, it felt like a journey to remembering that I was really fun. Like they were playing all like these awesome
So I wasn't
mixes
totally off
of
base.
all the hits of like, man, this is when I had fun when I was, in college. And this is when I had a fucking blast when I was working in LA doing bottle service and bartending. Like it was helping me to remember the part of me that had so much fun. Like every single song, I'm like, fuck yeah. Like it was so good and opening. It truly felt like a journey for me through myself.
About halfway through, I had determined that you were actually fun. And then my last thread of hope that maybe you weren't the person that I thought you were was dashed. And at that moment, I remember thinking to myself, like, I am fucked. I am so fucked. Like, this is it. She is the one, and I am fucked. And I started to quietly sob. We were dancing. I think Cisco's thong song was playing. Actually, it was like a remix, like a Latin remix.
I was doing like the da 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 da, like totally getting it. And then you grabbed me and hugged me,
And I was shaking.
Yeah, I mean, we were hugging for a moment, which felt hilarious because the thong song was playing, but also like it's really special. And in your embrace always felt like a sense of home. So, I'm not thinking anything of it, just like hugging on the dance floor to the thong song. And then you start shaking. And I look up at you and you're crying, like covered in tears. And I was so confused, like, we were just having so much fun. What happened? Wow.
Yeah. And really what I was realizing is that I didn't believe that I could heal myself and that I could live my best life and reach anything close to my potential if I wasn't going to be with you, and not just someone like you. It was you, because I've, explored the world and met a lot of different amazing, fucking fantastic people. But the way that you are as a being, I just recognized that you're it. You're the one that could actually help bring me to the fullest expression of my potential. And I believe that I could be that one for you. And so I was just sobbing because at that point I had no defense. I had nothing else. I was completely vulnerable. And, if you decided not to choose me, I was open to the entire devastation of that, but also the beautiful possibility that maybe you would this time, after the many years, maybe this time would be different. Maybe that you would give it a chance. So, we had to then at that point just reconcile that. And we had a couple other like breathwork experiences, but never crossed the physical threshold at all until you had, transitioned from your partnership, moved out of the house that you were currently staying in. And then at that point, the magnetism between us was just so strong.
It was really strong. And there wasn't any kind of, like you said, sexual intimacy or, and I mean, there was sensual intimacy and deep presence and absolute magnetism. But it was kind of like it was like we were both like tiptoeing. We were tiptoeing like on the edge of the shore, like, that ice looks like maybe we could walk on it, but maybe we're going to fall to our death. So
Yeah.
it definitely kind of trickled into it.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then it just, man, it just kept being incredible.
We kept having experiences and ceremonies and winks from the universe. And then eventually we crossed the threshold to kiss. And, and that's all we did is just kiss, and then even before we were actually more intimate than that, I was like, all right, I know, I'm in. And I bought an engagement ring at that point. I was like, I'm fucking in. And then bought the ring. And then maybe a week later was the first time that we were actually sexually intimate.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, which is also another beautiful,
love that
beautiful
story.
like ritual, which you kind of came up in your own mind.
I had a vision of just entering into sexuality or sexual intimacy in a really sacred way. And what I saw was me, doing sound and us in medicine together to kind of absolve all the energy of the ways that sex was used as a form of validation or things that weren't, pure or sacred. And it was absolutely beautiful, so emotional. I mean, for both of us, for me, it was the first time that I really felt like I had been made love to, in this incredibly expansive, divine sense. Like before I had known love or I'd known sexual intimacy in a way that kind of felt connected, but also kind of transactional. Like my body is a vessel, for physical pleasure, and I danced in that too. Like I'm not saying I was used, but that was the way that I kind of related to sexuality. It's like, I could be this way, but it wasn't making love and connecting with somebody on that deep of a level. And the first time that we were intimate, I was inconsolable. Like I was just like the movie scenes you see where they have sex and she's like in tears and it's beautiful. Holy fuck. I was waiting for this forever.
Yeah, and I was crying too, because instead of my idea of sexual performance was the reason that I would be worthy of love, like how I would perform was the reason that someone would love me, which was a deeply ingrained pathology that I had from growing up the way that I had, and my understanding of what made a man, and only a true man was worthy of love, and a true man always had the hardest dick ever and was the most amazing lover at all times. And yeah, that was it. Like that was the thing that made me worthy of love. And if I wasn't performing to that standard, then I wasn't worthy of love. And then of course nobody would love me because of all these reasons. And all of that started to evaporate because really your attention was not focused on my genitals. It was focused on my heart. And I remember looking at you like, yeah, it's the heart. It's the heart that needs the healing. You're like, yeah, I get it. And that was, so we got engaged shortly after that. And then as we kind of entered that container of love, we haven't spent a single day apart since then, since we went to Sedona and I proposed to you on the plane flight out to Sedona, and this beautiful experience, 2 weeks after I bought the ring. And the healing has just been exponential. And the potential for this kind of love where you just feel held and you feel like you don't have to compete anymore. You don't have to chase. You don't have to do anything. Just the pure presence of who you are is what makes you worthy of love, in a container that reminds you of that, having you be that mirror for me and me be that mirror for you.
Yeah.
So much healing has just, that wasn't formerly possible, was possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, I mean, one of the greatest gifts is feeling like I'm full Vylana, like my eternal soul, my being, that exists even beyond physical form. It feels like I'm totally online. Like every aspect of my being, being creative, my voice, being a medicine woman and my intuitive and healing abilities, like everything is, it's like our love has unlocked these key codes that only we could have for each other.
Yeah. And some of those, so for me, one of the things that unlocked is I had so much stress and tension about my own desire to do things to be worthy of love, from sexual things to things outwardly expressed to the world, that put me in constant anxiety, because I was always potentially maybe not living up to my own expectations of what a man should be or what I should be. So if I didn't meet my expectations, then I wasn't worthy of love. So I had that whole complex, and that kept me in such stress that I actually was dependent on Xanax to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And 2 days after we got engaged, we had a ceremony where you got to be in your full medicine woman bloom and use your voice and the bowls and every aspect of who you are to bring healing to me. And we also had, that same couple, the medicine man and woman that you mentioned, holding space for us as well. But it was really you who carried me through that whole night. And I just poured the Xanax in a toilet.
Yeah.
And
cold turkey.
Cold turkey. And that's not medically advisable. And I'm not saying that as a recommendation. Obviously, if you're going to duplicate what I did, you need a medicine woman as your fiance and a whole other container of things. And it has to be the right timing. But it worked for me. And there was some hard nights, but you were always there to do hape, which is the tobacco snuff, and then heal some part of me that was feeling that stress, and I was holding it in my body. Or sing me a song. You were singing me songs and playing the bowls for me when I couldn't sleep. And all of these things that were possible in that deep physical healing, to the point where now I've never felt healthier. I've never felt more alive and radiant as a physical human being than I am now.
Yeah.
And for you, one of the things I'd love you to touch on is how being loved in this way, including the sexuality, has unlocked a lot of the trauma that you'd carried sexually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've had some surprising experiences of repressed sexual trauma, being at the least bit sexually violated, if not raped when I was in college. Fully having the physical experience that was embedded in my nervous system of what that energy feels like. And just a lot of other experiences where, as a vulnerable woman, I think the energy in rape and being sexually violated is feeling like your power is taken away from you, feeling like your choice is taken away from you. But then also in relating to sexuality, the choices that I made to give my power away, because I wasn't really sure of myself. I was incredibly vulnerable in these experiences, to the point where I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of went with it. And those kinds of experiences came up, and it was really surprising, because they were so repressed. I had no recollection of many of these things happening, but the way that I moved through it, and this is a way that I see, a container of unconditional love. I don't think that the same way that you process trauma is the same. And that's just speaking from my personal experience. I was remembering these experiences. They were brought up from the unconscious into my conscious awareness, but it wasn't like I had to go through it in this drawn out, painful way. It just felt like it popped in as, this is part of you. This is something that you have experienced, but it didn't feel like I needed to go through it in a deep way again, because the love, the space that you have held for me just has felt so safe, and it gave me the ability to just let things go. And also to, feel for other women who, watching the Jeffrey Epstein, we only watched one episode, but hearing these interviews of these women and the vulnerability and their discomfort and not knowing what to do, so they just go with it. I think as a woman, we're put in situations like that, and because we don't really have our own empowered voice or ability to stand for ourselves and say no.
Yeah.
That is massive.
Sure. And of course, it's, the blame falls entirely on the expression of the dark masculine that's perpetrating these heinous acts. But, it is in some ways often possible because the women don't feel sovereign and powerful enough and loved unequivocally enough. And maybe there is a craving to get love, that same thing that you had when you were younger, and you're in college and you're with somebody and you still want love and you still want approval. And so that makes it possible for you to surrender, your own sense of this is not right, And of course, all the fault goes, of course, to the man in that situation. They're the one who's perpetrating, but nonetheless, like the defense to that attack comes from within, and the strengthening, like that's, yes, we absolutely need to, correct all of the masculine expressions of this 100%, but also we need to support women,
empower
women so much. Like that's the best defense we can possibly do, is just show women how to claim their voice and claim their power and be able to say, fuck no, fuck you, you're going to jail, like get the fuck out of here.
And I mean, in the way too, like in those experiences where I will, chose to give my power away out of not feeling that empowered voice within, and my own ignoring my internal compass, came so much shame. Like, it's like a traumatizing moment, but I'm ashamed that I allowed myself to even be a part of it. And so the way that I did everything, and the reason that these memories were so repressed was because I never told anybody about it. I never talked about it. It was just like cut off in my psyche, and that didn't happen. And I kept going on with life like those things never happened. And then you wonder, that's like energy and frequency and story that's actually happening in your internal world that you create in your external world in other ways.
Yeah, it's just banging around somewhere in your psyche, closed off in some quarantined kind of cage, and not being allowed to actually cry the tears and feel the feeling and the anger that comes up and the violation and the sadness, because the shame also buries it.
And to be supported.
Yeah, to be truly held.
To be seen and told that, like, it's okay.
For sure.
It's okay. You have nothing to be ashamed of, and to feel, to feel love in those moments.
Yeah. And that's the tragedy of everyone that's in some ways made that, like, there's so many examples of a woman who's in an experience like that, and somehow society will place blame on the woman. And some of that's internal, but that's the internal aspect of that comes from this external idea that having sex in this way is shameful, which has been internalized, and then people feel shame themselves, which is fucked up.
Yeah.
Like that's it blurs the line, allows these things to exist in the shadows when these things should be expressed, out in the open. And that's one of the beautiful things that's been happening now, is at least now these things are coming up. Yeah. These things that have been repressed, or there's an open forum and a space for people to like express these things that have been hidden in the shadows. And we see that coming up in many different ways in the collective now.
For sure. And I think that there's an importance on teaching young people, like the like really truly empowering people to experience sexuality in a healthy way. It's not this like holy as thou, you can only do love in this super sacred way, and you can't be kinky or have fun or have a one night stand or whatever. Right. But like educating people to be empowered in their sexuality.
Absolutely. And also just free. There's so much homophobia. And so the men who've been violated, I know so many men who've been violated when they were younger. It's not just women, like it's universal. Maybe happens more for women, and I think absolutely does. But men have been violated in many ways as well, by both men and women. I hear stories of this. And sometimes because the societal narrative is, don't worry about it, men just kind of slough it off if it's a woman. But if it's a man, that's even more shameful, because then especially if you got pleasure from it, well, then you're maybe homosexual. And so you bury it with even more shame, and it comes even deeper inside. And I've been in MDMA therapy sessions where I've been, fortunately welcomed into these sessions where I've watched powerful men, successful men go through these repressed sexual traumas where another man had abused them and they buried it from their own shame, about these experiences. So that thing is universal. So opening up that conversation and allowing these things to heal is so vital. It's just so, so, so important.
For sure. I absolutely, completely agree. And the way that it can heal is through love and support. And I very much felt that, with you, I think I was ready. It's almost like, the system of my body was ready for me to face these things because I knew how held I would be, so thank you for being my,
for sure,
my beautiful mirror of once again,
and
seeing
likewise,
myself.
And, thank you for everything that you've offered to me. I mean, it's truly a dream. And we carried that dream and we got married by Elvis in Vegas and just had a fucking blast.
We got to talk about that a little bit because I think everyone should get married with their friends. So we have our friends.
It's a lot of coordination. You got to really wait, but it happened serendipitously for us.
It was so perfect. Our friends Roby and Kamu from Prague got stuck in Sedona because they were originally going to be there for some of your retreats, and then the lockdown happened. So they just were, stuck there. And we got to connect and deepen our soul relationships with them. And they got engaged the day before us. And so we all went to Vegas together and got married together. We took turns getting married together. And it was so incredible and so graceful and not stressful and beautiful and deep and hilarious.
And
it
fun.
was all the things.
Yeah.
Jinx.
And I think that's also it. We have so many of these expectations about what a marriage should be, and especially for people who know us as spiritual beings, particularly us saying, "Yeah, we got married by Elvis and it was awesome." They're like, "Huh?" They're like, "Yeah," because that's the full expression. Like all of it is beautiful, whether you're having, kinky fun sex or dancing to hip hop, or whether you're deep in meditation on a mountaintop, connecting with your soul's purpose. Like both are beautiful. We're human beings. Like we're here to taste all the different fruits and experience things as long as we're supporting each other, supporting ourselves and supporting the collective and not taking.
Yeah.
Like if you're not taking and you're not hurting and you're not harming anybody and you're just experiencing, well, that's what we're fucking here to do.
Yeah. We're here to do human. We didn't come here to just be angels, flying around the earth. Like we came here to do human in all of its experiences. And that includes kinky sex and all the things.
So if you had to tell a young girl, who's been in and out of these challenging romantic relationships, dealing with a lot of the things, if you had to go speak directly to that person, it could be any age, honestly. I mean, it could be a woman of 40 or a girl of 16, like either way, like what would you tell them from what you've learned about love and what you've learned about how to traverse this journey?
Yeah. I mean, at its core is, what are the stories that you have around love? Like for me, I didn't know how to trust in it. And so that it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I believe that I cannot trust in love, I will create all of the experiences where I can't trust in love. So getting really clear in yourself about what part of you is continuing to create these experiences and having the awareness around it to be able to change, to be able to evolve, to be able to grow. I also think that, practices where you're really being unconditionally loving of yourself. And that means, honoring and speaking your needs and your desires and your boundaries. One thing that I was horrible at in life was boundaries. Like, if I have a boundary, I'm afraid I'm going to lose love. And I don't even think I was ever really clear about what those were for me, but they would happen in moments when I would get angry or triggered, or, it was like the part of me that was speaking to me, this is a boundary of something that isn't okay with me. And so, yeah, like really, really honoring yourself and knowing yourself, knowing what it is that you need, taking the time to be present with what that is and not being afraid to ask for it. You know, if you ask for your needs and desires from a partner and, you know, that doesn't align with theirs, maybe there's a misalignment in the relationship. You know, maybe it's something that you can work through, but like if you're always honoring yourself, the world around you is listening to that, and it is also going to honor you.
Yeah.
You really have to put yourself first, and that's not in a it's not in a selfish sense, like what I need is the most important, but like if you're not going to honor your needs and desires, nobody else is going to do it for you, and you're always going to end up in relationships that don't feel fulfilling. So like get right with that part in you first, and that takes action in moments, you know, of just choosing to do that, especially when it's uncomfortable. Like I think for a lot of women, because we feel so much, and like I said, I've always been really sensitive to people's energy shifts, and I could read people really well. And so when something was coming from me that was disruptive for them, it was kind of like I would do whatever I could to fix it, instead of taking a second to breathe and reflect on what's here for me. You know, I also matter. You matter the most. Like nobody else can do you the way that you do and the way that you need.
Yeah.
And just feel safe to love yourself in that way. Like I don't think we celebrate our magnificence enough, you know, and I don't think that's an egotistic thing. Like, I mean, if it's like narcissism or like a fake projection of you are great.
As a compensation mechanism, or the motivation behind it is to parade some aspect of yourself that you think is better than everybody else. That's different. But our inherent magnificence in every single person is magnificent.
Every single person is so magnificent. So like, can we celebrate that more?
For sure.
I try to celebrate that in all of my relationships, because that's the way that I like to see the world. And in a great way, I have found how to see that in myself. And I think that's why
Yes, you have.
I think that's why this relationship came into being, and why this is all possible. Is it started with that incredibly solid, unconditional self-love.
Amen. And have a little faith.
Have faith.
Have a little faith. It'll soften all the sharp corners and all the edges, you know, and know that whatever you've experienced, it's possible to heal. We've seen amazing healing happen in all the circles, and the plant medicine circles, and the breath work circles, and everything that we've done. We've watched incredible healing happen. And like Maestro Alberto, one of my, you know, most powerful ayahuasca shamans that I work with, he said, "We can fix anything but dead." And I was like, I fucking dig that. You know, like whatever you've gone through, whatever you've experienced, like healing is possible. You're that powerful that you can do it.
And also honor it, because so much of the healing of the self is how you become a master in serving others. You know, I can so deeply talk about my experiences to hopefully inspire, you know, somebody else's light awakening moment in themselves, because they relate to me. And like, that's part of the point. Why we go through all the challenge and struggle is for how we can show up to serve others in the world.
Indeed. Well, the last thing that we haven't touched on is, you know, you were trying to be a singer, trying to be Christina Aguilera, trying to be a pop star based on that traditional model that you were conditioned to believe was everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then you gave singing up because you knew that wasn't right. It didn't fit right. It didn't sit right with you.
Yeah.
But then along your journey, you picked it up again as a sound healer.
Yeah. Yeah. It was my dream as a little girl. It just was misplaced in the way that I saw it. And so I experienced trying to be an artist, living in LA and working with incredible producers and writers and magical creative people. But it was really void of the soul for me. You know, it really shined light on the part of me that was trying to prove, I could go in the studio and sing the way that they wanted me to. And then when I listen to it afterwards, I'm like, it sounds pretty, but I don't love this because I don't mean anything that I'm saying. And so I did. I gave up singing, which was heartbreaking because then I had no idea what I was going to, like, that was the thing, that was the thing that I was supposed to do. So for it to not be the thing anymore, it's actually what started my awakening, because I started to search for myself. And in searching for myself, I found sound healing. I had my first sound healing by a beautiful woman here in Austin. Her name's Tina Rodriguez. Check her out on Instagram because she is an incredibly powerful, amazing being. I had my first sound healing with her probably about 2 or 3 years ago. And within the first 5 minutes, I was having a completely visceral ayahuasca-like experience, like an absolute journey just from sound. And I use that as a tool, to help me to move through whatever I was going through. And it opened up so much in me and awakened these, shadowy places that I couldn't access. It was like it was just coming into my being. And so I used it in as a way to heal in receiving, and then decided eventually to do it myself. And I did a certification by her same teacher, Paul Hubbard, who I love. And I started to heal myself through sound. At the time, I was in a really, really, really dark place. And I actually went and spent a month in isolation at the ranch in Sedona. And I used sound to break open my heart that was so guarded from a life of suffering and traumatic relationships and codependency. It was like, I saw it as kind of like lava, like lava that was kind of cracked, and the inside was moving, but it was guarded. And in using the sound to heal myself, like, I really realized that this is what I'm here to do. Like, this is my purpose, to be able to facilitate this for other people, the thing that I love the most, giving people the space to evolve and expand and heal. And it has truly been the greatest gift. I mean, so much of myself has just opened in the experience of receiving sound, facilitating sound, connecting with people so intimately, and just really trusting everything that comes through.
Yeah. It's so, people may underestimate the power of sound as a healing tool, but when you think about it, the brainwave patterns, these are on regular patterns of vibration, where neurons are firing at certain intervals, and the sound has a way to actually influence, the way that your brain is actually firing and the way that your body is receiving, atomic motion, which is moving slower or faster. And depending on the density of what's there, sound has the way to move through all of that and create shifts, like physical shifts on a cellular level in the body and in the mind. It's why we like certain music when we work out, or certain music when we surf, or certain music when we meditate.
Or movie scores. Could you imagine a tragedy scene in a movie without sound? Like, our bodies are so, we are made to be receptive to sound. It literally penetrates us, like you said, on a cellular level throughout our entire being in a non-invasive way. It's just, resonating the frequency externally with what's happening internally. And that's the way that sound works. It's if you think of your system, your body, as everything in the universe is vibration. So every Aubrey Marcus cell is vibrating at a certain frequency. And there's a resonant frequency when you are in pristine health. So when you experience physical ailments, or undesired experiences, it's like something is out of resonance, something is dissonant. If you think of it like a symphony, your body is the symphony in health. And if one aspect of it is offbeat, goes out of tune, it's like disrupting your entire being. And so what sound has the ability to do is to move through you, through your entire being, to bring you back into resonance and to bring you back into harmony. And I've seen it in vision as this incredibly precise technology that, there's a lot of science-based evidence, if you go looking for it, of the effects that sound has on your entire system, on your physical body, your mental body, your emotional states, your immune system. I mean, there's so much evidence at this point, which is really exciting because it's been used in ancient traditions for thousands of years. And so now, people know what it feels like coming out of a sound healing or when they listen to certain kinds of music, but to now have, the evidence to show what's actually happening in the body. It's so exciting.
And that's just scratching the surface.
It's just scratching the surface.
I think there's so much more to go as far as understanding like what the full capabilities of sound are. And, we're in a time where science is important to get the skeptics to kind of take a look. But at the same time, like put yourself as an N of one in the laboratory experience. And perhaps even, I know you're going to play these bowls again here in a moment, just allow yourself, give yourself the space, take some deep breaths and, experience just a taste of this for yourself and just see what you feel.
Yeah.
And that's the most important experiment of all is the experiment of you and give it a go.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Ready? Let's do it.
Beautiful. Go ahead and close your eyes. Take a gentle breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Grounding down into this moment. The only responsibility that you have is just openness to feel, to allow the sound to move through you, to know that it is bringing you into greater resonance, balance, and peace. Take one or both of your hands and place it on your heart. And in this moment, send yourself unconditional love. The forgiveness, the compassion that you so easily give to others. Give it to yourself in this moment. Feel it move through your entire being. You are worthy of this love. Repeat these words after me. I love me. I am free.
I love you so much.
I love you.
My medicine woman, my wife, just so much gratitude. And I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with you.
Me too, my love.
You got a Spotify station that's coming online.
Yeah.
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 Vylana, Vylana on Spotify, and Instagram, Vylana Marcus.
You seem like you're in a daze.
I am. Well, it works. All right. Like, what do you expect? What do you want me to do? Just turn it back on? Fine. I'll fucking turn it back on. Your sound healing is not that powerful. I can just be whatever I want to be. I'm not in a daze. I'm not affected at all.
I love you.
I love you too. I love you too.
We'll have a song up shortly. It's it'll be my first song on my Spotify artist account. It's called Initiation. And I sang it while we were in Sedona, and I sang it for the world, for everything that's happening, all of the chaos and disruption and anger and everything that everyone is feeling so much. I was singing to that, and I've honestly used it in my daily practice for myself because it feels so empowering and healing. So yeah, would love for people to listen for your own healing and peace. It's a big part of my heart to be able to share this gift.
It was an inspired transmission for sure. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We love you.
We love you. We did it.
Bye.
Yay.
This has been a hell of a year. But as I always say, resistance creates adaptation. And with the Fit for Service Fellowship, that could not be more the case. I am just absolutely blown away at how this community has responded. Not just the way that the coaches have dealt with the situation, but how the members have really come together. What I'm seeing within the community, it truly is recalibrating my understanding of what the potential of the Fit for Service mastermind, fellowship, family is all about. Because every single day, there's people reaching out to each other, forming small groups, helping each other through whatever challenging situation they're in, all across the country, all across the world. And these little gatherings are happening everywhere, constantly, without any overview or oversight. And yes, we have our big summits. And in T3, we're going to be going to Sedona, one of the most magical places on the planet, and experiencing everything together, going through all of this transformation as a group, in unity. Barring some statewide legislation preventing us from going there, we're going to be there because I truly believe that the impetus to grow, to become fit for service, to become healthier, to become stronger is absolutely necessary for the pillars of the community to be able to stand up and be of service in these times of fear, in these times of disruption, in these times of chaos, and also be able to lean on each other and figure out the ways that we can support the collective when the collective needs it the most. This is now truly that round table, that Camelot, where people can hold space for whatever you are going through and support you in any way. There are so many masters in this group, not just the coaches, not just myself and Godzi and Kyle and Caitlin and all the other master coaches that we're bringing together, but every one of the individual members, each becoming their own masters. I mean, I think back to my own youth and just imagine, like, what an experience this would be to have somebody I could share everything. Oh, I just went on an ayahuasca journey. Great. I have 50 people I can talk to about it who can support me. I'm just experiencing this challenging thing with work. Great. I have 30 entrepreneurs that can help guide me on my path, each with a different set of skills, each with a different background, and have this safe space, this community, this group of people working together, always unprompted, to support each other. It's what I always imagined like a fraternity hoped it could be, or a sorority hoped it could be. Instead of just a place to go party or a place to go learn this little trivial thing, it's a real community where you answer the call of service to one another, and that's what this thing is. And if you're called to it, if you want to apply, I have no doubt that you will add your own magic to this thing that's already been created, already thriving, and continuing to thrive. When we did a poll last year, 9 out of 10 people formed a lifelong friendship with one or more of the FFS members, and 1 out of every 3 formed a new business partnership. I mean, these are massive, life-changing alterations beyond just the curriculum and the coaching and the transformational experiences that we're providing. I've met so many incredible human beings, and if you're listening to this and you're feeling it, you're one of those human beings. So for those of you who feel called to apply, I can't wait to communicate with you on our Zoom calls, on our live chats, and our Instagram, and our new mobile app that we're developing, and of course, to see you in person. So I can't wait to meet all of you and become a part of your journey as you will become a part of all of ours. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe. Also, share with any friend that you think might benefit from it. And lastly, go to aubreymarcus.com, sign up for my newsletter diary, and you won't miss a thing.